Hello and welcome to the Kilowatt Half Hour episode 40. Yes, we've made it to 40. Your weekly roundup of all about the world of electric cars brought to you by the team at electrifying.com. This week we'll be discussing our guilty electric car pleasures, the cars we've been driving, and we'll be answering your electric car questions and dipping into the postbag. I'm Mike.
And I'm Tom. We should probably explain where we are, because if you can see us, you'll see that we're in a car. If you can only hear us, it might sound a bit odd.
It might sound a bit odd, yeah. And if you are listening to it on a podcast platform, apologies. But if you're watching on YouTube, you may be wondering, well, we're actually sitting in the back of my Ioniq 5, because back behind us is where we do all our filming. And although they said they keep it nice and quiet for us, it's always chaos. There's always someone coming in making a cup of tea. So we decided we were going to decamp to the car, try out the vehicle to load system, and we parked very next to the shed so we can actually pick up some Wi-Fi signal. So if we drop out for 10 minutes, stick with us. We'll come back. But
have you ever been in the back of your car before?
I have been in the back of the car, probably to clean it out, but I haven't actually ridden in the back of the car. There's quite a lot.
Loads of space.
We shouldn't sound surprised. We review these things for a living, Tom. We should know exactly how much space in the back of it. But there we go. Anyway, have you had a good week? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been away. I went to a festival, and I took a motorhome because I'm too old for camping now. And it was great. I mean, it's strange getting in a diesel again. They are noisy and horrible and quite expensive. But what was incredible, it had solar panels on the roof. Nice. And we didn't need to plug in, so everything was running off the solar panels, and it was constantly, because it was sunny, topping up the charge. And it made me think, why don't electric cars have solar panels? But of course they do. And I did do the sums on a Genesis once, and worked out, I think it was a £1,200 option, and I worked out you'd need to be in a sunny country for 10 years to get the money back. But it's got to come, hasn't it, where electric cars have solar panels on the roof to efficiently top up just a little bit, or keep the aircon running, or maybe a heater or something.
It is a small advantage. I remember the Ioniq 5, the first version of that, the Project 45, came with a solar panel on the roof, and I remember reading the sums in the press pack, and it wasn't that. It was if you left it out for 12 hours in direct sunlight, you could gain something like 2 kilowatt hours or something. It's minimal, and I think people kind of think that one solar panel on a roof is going to drive the car, but it's really kind of fairly small returns for the actual weight and the complexity and the cost of putting it on there. But as you say, I mean, photovoltaics are moving in that direction.
Well, this was a 200 watt panel on this camper van, which is
good size.
Yeah, do the job, wouldn't it? Yeah, give you a mile or so a day, probably.
Yeah, add up over a year, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, what we're going to talk about today is our guilty pleasures. Now, I had a Q8 in last week, which I briefly sort of touched upon, which kind of made no sense on any level. It was expensive, the range wasn't great. I kind of liked it, not enough to think it's one of my favourite cars, but I kind of quite liked it. And asking around the Electrifying team, there are quite a few people with cars that we like, but if you looked at the figures, you wouldn't choose one. It has to be sort of a decision that's made from the heart rather than the head. So what did you think, Tom?
Well, the obvious one is the Lexus UX, which I keep whittering on about, which is just one of those cars that just fitted me and fitted my lifestyle perfectly, and I like the amount of buttons and things, and I know it's old-fashioned, but it just made sense for me. But the other one, I suppose, is another car that's old-fashioned, which probably says something about me, which is the Volkswagen E-Up and the Seat Me. And we had one of those for a few months, a couple of years ago, and I just loved it. The fact it's got an old-fashioned key and a handbrake and all that, and it was efficient, and it was small, and it was easy to buy. I just found myself taking that car rather than something bigger and posher, because I knew it was going to be fun and nice to drive.
I've also got two that kind of top and tail the market. At the top end is the ID Buzz, which, when you look at the figures, it's woefully inefficient because it's big and heavy, unnecessarily so. It's got a decent sized battery, but you're really going to be lucky to get 200 miles of range out of that in the winter, aren't you? When we had one in, we struggled to do that. But there's something about it. I don't know what it is. It's got a bit of character that's kind of lacking from the other ID cars, and I just love it. I just find myself drawn to it, and I've foolishly set up an alert on a well-known second-hand car sales site, which
ours, obviously
ours. And I get an update every other day of new cars that have arrived, and nothing is remotely within the ballpark of being affordable. But I'm hoping that in 3 years' time, maybe, when those first leases will come to an end, an ID Buzz might be mine. But
I think I'm the only person on the team who doesn't
doesn't
get
like it.
No, well, I drove one and it was cold, and I think the range said 156 miles because it was below zero, and I'm like, no, you're joking. Huge battery, 156 miles. And then I drove it around, and everybody was looking at me, and everybody wanted to stop and talk about it. I just found it
A bit too much.
tiresome. It wasn't me, but again, that's me. I like the Lexus UX, which is the world's most invisible car.
It's
It just
true.
blends in. So perhaps that says
I think
something about us.
Nikki was on the same page as you. She hated
Yeah,
it, didn't she?
she did.
Because it was just such a kind of. And I wonder, I'm not going to argue against myself here. I kind of wonder if how well those looks will date, because you and I both worked on car magazines where there was stuff that was so hot, wasn't it? A PT Cruiser. Do you remember that?
Yep.
And there was a fight to take that thing home at night,
Yep.
and everybody spoke about it. You got pulled over in supermarket car parks to talk about it. And within about 2 years, everyone hated it. It was just naff. It was slightly old fashioned. So I wonder if the Buzz will have that same effect, but I'm kind of hoping it doesn't. But the other car I really like for no reason at all is the Fiat 500e, which I'm quite fussy about. I like it being rose gold with the right wheels on it, but I think I just love that. I just love the style of it. But again, it's utterly pointless. If you had one and you were trying to commute long distances in it, you'd be stopping every 10 minutes. But there's something about it that I really love, and it doesn't have that kind of same feel as the other Stellantis group cars, because it was done before pre-Stellantis kind of takeover. It was still part of Fiat Chrysler, wasn't it, at that point when the car was built? And it's probably the only car that's going to be built on that platform, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was something about it. When I see one coming the other way, I always think, I think it's just a beautiful piece of design.
But only in that rose gold.
Generally speaking, only in that rose gold. There's a nice light blue they do. But yeah, I think cars are very colour dependent, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
We were talking about the Buzz briefly there. When I go onto this well-known car sales site, I always rank it from cheapest to most expensive. And all the ID Buzzes, there are quite a few under 40 grand now, but they're all either dark blue, grey, or black. If you want any of the kind of the colours I'd like, so the yellow, the green, the orange.
Didn't they have a problem with the two-tone?
Yeah, wait a lot longer for two-tone. So, you could get it almost a year earlier, which seems bizarre having this conversation now, given that you can get one this afternoon if you want.
Yeah.
At the time, it was it was like a year quicker.
The price of Fiat 500s is a really strange thing, because obviously I look at all the deals and things. And when a couple of weeks ago there was a Lotus Electro, and it was 700 and something per month on a lease. And it's got 900 horsepower. And I was looking at what the equivalent cars are for £700 a month, and a 500e a Bath was on there, at like more expensive than a Lotus Electric. I'm like, what's going on? But then at the other end of the scale, you can get the 24 kilowatt hour battery 500e basic one for 21 grand now. Almost giving them away on a lease. It's like, how such a big stretch between the two?
Fiat held out at a really high price for 500 for such a long time, and it looked expensive when it first came out, and when stuff like the Dolphin and the MG4 came out, you kind of think this is still 3 or 4 grand more than an MG4, which would go almost 100 miles further, charge quicker, do everything better. You kind of. I know Stellantis never want to lose money on a car, do they? As famously Carlos Tavares says, they'll never lose money on a car. So it's like they've steadfastly stuck to that, which is a shame, because I think the 500 is brilliant, but I think it's massively overpriced for what it is. But there we go. Those are my two guilty pleasures. But and of course we have.
So yours are interesting and mine are tedious. So I think that says something about us, doesn't it?
Mine are absolute peacock cars. So a yellow and white Buzz or a pink Fiat 500, and your two cars are the sort of thing that librarians or nothing wrong with librarians. I'm sure they choose interesting cars, but anyway, we'll move on. But we have someone else in our crew who has a very odd. Very odd.
It's an obsession, isn't it? I mean, it's a nice car, but he's obsessed with it. Yeah,
Manos, who is going to edit this, so this may not actually make the cut. But Manos is for some reason obsessed with the Jeep Avenger. Now, not a strange thing to be obsessed with. It's a very good car, but Manos is also a man who is. I think can we call him a petrol head? Are we allowed to call him a petrol head?
So, yeah.
He's very much a fan of old school things like Toyota Supras, BMW straight sixes,
things with V8s,
anything that kind of makes a noise is, got a big engine, woefully inefficient. He loves that's his jam. We will never dissuade him away from any of that. But for some reason, he goes absolutely gaga for the Jeep Avenger. So,
and also, I thought it may be a practicality thing because he carries around all his video equipment everywhere, and he had a BMW Estate, and it was it was constantly full. It was like Tetris trying to fit everything into it, and he's not going to be able to fit everything in the Jeep unless he's permanently got the back seats down.
No, but it's not a problem to him.
No.
It's like those people that just make things work, even though it is clearly a massive problem to get everything, all his kit in. He just loves it. I don't know. Maybe we should get him on the podcast to explain it. But it is an irrational love. But that is all good. This is what we like. I mean, if we all like the same things, we'd all be driving the same things. So it's if you've got a guilty pleasure, if you're out there and you think, I really like this one, nobody else gets it, please let us know in the comments below on the YouTube version of this podcast, and we'll bring it up in following weeks. So let's move on now to your deal of the week, Tom. You've been scouring the classifieds. What have you come up with?
Interesting? I mean, Vauxhalls are always at the top. So you're saying that Stellantis never want to lose money on the car. I'm not sure that's true because they must be on some of these. But what's interesting this week is that the Mokka is now cheaper than a Corsa. So they're obviously just looking at what's parked up in the field. So electric Mokka, £218 a month using my usual criteria, which is you've got 6 months deposit and 3-year cycle and 8,000 miles a year. So £218 a month for a Mokka.
Okay.
And a Corsa is £225. So I mean, obviously you'd go for the Mokka, wouldn't you? Unless you have a height restriction in your garage or something. Do
you like the Mokka? I prefer the Mokka to a Corsa.
I think I would. I drove a Corsa not so long ago and was surprised at how nice it was. Just felt refined and grown up. And we had a Mokka for a while, didn't we? It was a long term, a bright green one.
Yeah.
And I like that too. So, I mean, these are the ones with the old battery and running gear. So the range is only going to be 200 miles at best, I think. But still, I mean, 218 quid a month. If you're spending £100 a month on petrol and, I don't know, 30 quid a month on tax at the moment,
that's 2 months' pay for itself, isn't it?
But even cheaper, the Leaf, obviously, they've stopped making the Nissan Leaf.
Yep.
And there must be a big stock of them somewhere because they're now trying to get rid of them. So an N connector is £172.77 a month using those same criteria. I know. Or £178 you want the Tecna, which is posh and has a better radio and leather and that sort of thing.
So £6 a month more to get all that, get a load of extra kit.
Yeah. I mean, the N connector's a nice spec. I think the Tecna, the wheels aren't quite as nice, but I think, you just go on the colour or something. I mean, that's a couple of coffees, isn't it? That sort of one. And
this is how the kind of PCP thing works, isn't it? Because you talk to car manufacturers. Oh, you might hear things going past. Sorry. This is how the PCP things work, and we often get, why is the best-selling model of a particular range like the high-end one? No, MG they sell more trophies than they do anything else, and you kind of think, well, there's quite a big gap in terms of the price. It might be £4 or £5 more list price, but when it comes down to the monthly payments, they're so canny, car makers. It'll often be something like £18 a month more plus, but you get so much more kit. I mean, you end up paying for it in the end. That's the way it is. But often those higher spec cars have better resale value than the really cheap entry level ones, which secondhand dealers, the dealers struggle to sell those as much as the one that's full of buttons. So it's often better to go with that, and it's a few quid more a month. And you quite easily get sold into that when you're buying stuff. So that's generally
it's also the reason that dealers try and dissuade you from having a interesting colour, isn't it? Because if it's coming on a lease or a PCP, they know they're the ones who are going to have to sell it. So it's like, I'll have the bright yellow one, and they go, have the grey. Only got the grey in stock. Yours would have to be a factory order, and you have to wait 9 years for it or something. So
I was really annoyed with my dad because he bought a Leaf, the second generation Leaf, about 3 years ago, and he said, I love it. And they were really nice red when he went for his test drive. And I went in to do the deal a couple of weeks later, and exactly that. They said, well, it's going to be better resale value for the grey, which this is what most people want. So he bought a grey one. I said, Dad, you didn't want a grey car. You want a red car. Yeah, I know, but the dealer said it was going to be worth more further down the line.
That's what he had in stock, wasn't it?
It's exactly what he had in stock. But my dad's also one of the people that, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, old school. He wants to go in there on a Saturday morning, then drive out in a new car. That's because that's what he used to do in the sort of 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's what he's. When they said, I mean, it was at the height of all the kind of the processor shortages and everything, the semiconductor shortages, when everyone was waiting. If you thought under 2 years was a good deal. I think that the Nissan dealer said, "I'll get it to you in 12 weeks." And I think he just walked out. He said, I'm not waiting that long. It's just literally. So
Americans are like that, aren't they? I don't know if there are any Americans out there, but they don't like ordering cars. They want it there and there. So things like Bentleys, which people go to the factory and choose, the stitching they're going to have. America, they just go, no, I want that. So all the cars in America in showrooms are pre-ordered, so they just go for like white.
That is it. They just build them. And that these approaches, they don't want to sell it to me. If they haven't got it, I'm not interested. And I think he then sort of did a bit of research and found out that everywhere else was going to be a year to 2 years to anything else. So grudgingly waited the 12 weeks for this grey Nissan he didn't want to turn up. So anyway, that's
I think grey Nissan Leafs are quite nice, actually, Mike.
You've got a grey Nissan Leaf. I know. And I realised the other day I'm moaning about cars not being colourful colours, and I was sitting in the greyest car in the world.
Colour as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's like a Lufthansa lounge in here. It's so grey. It really is. Shall we move on to our reader questions?
Yeah, there's some good ones.
There's some really good ones. Yeah. William McBride. Hello, Electrifying team. I'm about to take my driving test in a couple of weeks. Good luck. Third attempt, unfortunately. Don't worry, William. Get there in the end. And I'll be looking at potential first car options. I was looking at getting something like a Vauxhall Corsa or Renault Clio, but I also saw that a Nissan Leaf for £17,000 discount from £30,000 brand new, and a lease deal for a Nissan Leaf for £130 a month.
That's better than my one. That's amazing.
It will get William on the case instead of you, with a 1.5k upfront on a 3-year lease. He's got a charger he can use at home. What do you make about going electric for a first car? And is the Nissan Leaf still a good buy?
Well, I'm not sure what the insurance is like on a Nissan Leaf for a first drive. That's going to be a thing. Get a quote first. I mean, it's not as bad as some of the others, but I think generally it might be a little more expensive than the usual kind of 1 litre Corsa or something. It's going to be more than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Leaf, I've had one for ages. I think they're very reliable. It's obviously feeling a bit old now. The 39 kilowatt hour battery isn't, it's 173-ish mile range. So it's not, but it's great. It'll be like a great first car, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're kind of assuming, having read that William is a younger person, but of course he may not be. So the insurance may not be as catastrophically expensive as I suspect it might be. But I mean, I would have no qualms in the concept of being electric for your first car. I think, I was talking to someone at the weekend about it. Said, I'm worried that my kids are going to learn, in an automatic, and they'll drive electric. They'll never learn manual. I think unless you're a real, you want to drive classic cars and really into older stuff, in which case do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, I know lots of my kids' friends are learning in autos because it's so much easier, and they don't think they'll ever need to drive a manual.
Exactly. Yeah, I think my niece Daisy, she recently passed in a automatic. She's got a Fiesta automatic, and loves it. All that stress of the kind of the coordination of the all that was removed, and allowed you to chilled out, passed the next test, and it was just I don't have any problem. I'd be quite happy not to drive another manual gearbox. I mean, I've got a load of old nonsense on my driveway and things that I'll probably still have to drive manual.
Have you still got, what have you got that's manual?
I haven't actually, have I? No, I've only got the Smart, which is semi-automatic.
No clutch,
I don't have my MX-5 anymore, so that used to have anyway. So I could go completely 2-pedal.
Yeah.
The way to. You've still got a load of old rubbish.
Still a load of old rubbish, yeah. So I still know how a clutch works.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you can tell me about it anyway. So anyway, really, William, we said yes, good idea. But I would definitely do this. I'm sure you have. Don't do the sums because it might be that the insurance puts you off. But I won't worry about too much about that. Peter Walters, email via podcast@electrifying.com. Any car buying queries or anything, please let us know on that email address. I have a Tesla Model 3 that's coming to the end of its 3-year lease in September. I'm a little disappointed that Tesla hasn't added anything new to the range and doesn't appear to have anything comparable in the pipeline. I could just get another, but it feels like buying the same iPhone again after 3 years. What else should I consider?
Well, the Model 3 has changed a reasonable amount, hasn't it? Had an update. It's not so you notice, but I suppose your iPhone doesn't look that different but if you know.
Yeah.
We were having a poke around the Model 3 we've got here today,
Yes.
weren't we? And there are some strange things on it. I mean, there's the indicators, which apparently you get used to. But there's a badge on the back because it's a performance that
Yeah.
looks like something from a cartoon, doesn't it?
It's the Played sticker, and it's on the seat backs as well. I noticed that, but it does look like some kids kind of got it out of a magazine and stuck it on the back of the car. It's the old bit where they used to have dual motor sticker on it, and that sort of that area on the boot lid. But it does look like something out of a comic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it should say "pow," in that font.
It's one of those kind of like holographic things, isn't it?
Yeah.
That were kind of really in a while ago. But it's very strange, and it's got this carbon fiber spoiler on it that looks like it's a very aftermarket, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So, but it does have other changes, of course. It's more refined, isn't it? And it's got
it's quieter and bits and pieces. Yeah. So I can understand where Peter's coming from in so much as, and I think it's more the kind of there's nothing in the pipeline as well, isn't it? Because it's had a lot of, obviously gets software updates all the time, and there have been a few hardware updates to that car. But I know what you mean. It's the thing of, it's like when your kettle breaks, isn't it? You kind of think it's been a really good kettle, but it's like 2 years later, and you kind of think, do I want to spend all that money in buying exactly the same kettle? I might try something for the sake of difference.
Yeah.
I want something a bit different. Otherwise, I'm going to be spending another 40 quid on exactly the same product that I've had before. At least there'll be something. If it looks different, even if it's a different color, I don't know. I know the iPhone analogy is quite a good one, isn't it? Because if my iPhone packed up after another 2 years, do I want to spend that much money again on getting exactly the same product as I've just had, even if it's as you say, got a different rounded corner on the screen or just a different color? I don't know. But yeah, in terms of alternatives, you've driven the Polestars, haven't you?
Yeah, I quite like the Polestars. I mean, the new the Polestar 2, and we've got one of those here today. It's feeling a little bit old, but it's still a great car, I think. And there's some good deals on those. The Polestar 3,
that's the SUV
which is the big one. I still have to check because that doesn't make any sense, does it?
Right.
I really liked the Polestar 4. I wasn't quite so sure about in lower spec form. I think it makes a lot of sense. BMW i4, I think, is still a absolutely stonking car in that sort of class.
Yeah.
What else is there? We'd have from. If Ginny was here, she'd say a Skoda Enyaq, obviously.
Well, that's the answer for everything, isn't it? I mean, we're in an Ioniq 5 now, so maybe that, because they've really given that's had quite a few updates along the way. My car's a really early one, so it's a 73 kilowatt hour battery. I think it comes with an 82 or an 83 kilowatt hour battery now, and that's really pushes it to kind of 300-mile range, and the rest of it's lovely. It's a really nice car. I mean, I'm going to do it going a little bit further. I can get from here to back home again in one charge would be nice. So yeah, I mean, there are lots to consider if you just fancy a change. If it's all on a PCP and a lease, it's 3 years time.
What do you think of the Ioniq 6 as a Ioniq 5 owner? I mean, that would go a little bit further.
It would go a bit further. It's not to my taste.
No, it's not to mine either. It's interesting you say that. I mean, even apart from the looks, which are obviously done by aerodynamics, I think there was something a bit weird about the way it drove. I can't remember what it is now. It'll be in the review somewhere.
No, I can't remember either. It's so long ago. But no, it's not one of those cars that grabs me. When I knew it was coming out and we'd seen spy shots of it, I thought, I should have waited. I should have maybe got 6. That might be a bit more my thing. But there's something about it. I just don't think. I don't know. The design doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of other people and they really like it. So it's but yeah, it's not eating away. I've not got an alert for it set up on a well-known weekly car sales site. So it's not really kind of in my wheelhouse. Those things the kids like to say, don't they? So final buying question. Oh, there you go. Polestar. Gary Wild 6171 says, I've just bought an 18-month Polestar from a company director for less than half its purchase price. Good for you. The seller said that it didn't cost him as much because he offset 100% against of the value against tax. My question is, will the current government clamp down on these tax breaks, which appear to largely benefit the well-off? It's a deep question.
I think they probably will. I mean, we've started to see them tightening up the tax around electric cars, and we even were just introducing road tax on them, for example.
Of course, so vehicle excise duty.
Sorry,
someone will point that out.
Yeah. Road fund license.
Road fund license.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So I think it's inevitable that it will happen, but I think they quite like it at the moment because the cars are bought by companies.
Yeah.
And then after 18 months, as in your case, they go onto the used car market where they are exceptional value.
Yeah.
And that means that people who aren't or don't have access to these kind of company schemes get cheap electric cars, and it just means that we can all then drive them, which is what they want ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, as we're seeing now, the market is getting not flooded, but it's getting an influx of cars on that they're ending on 3-year leases. People that bought Model 3s during the pandemic, just after that, all coming onto the market now, and yes, it's depressing the prices, and for mugs like me who bought a car, personally, I've taken a huge hit on it, in terms of residual values, but it does mean there are so many more cars in the system, and if you think they're in 4 or 5 years' time, whether that was part of the plan, I'm not entirely sure that the thinking was that joined up, but it certainly makes a lot of sense now that there's going to be far more cars on the used car market that are electric, and there's going to be plenty of people choices. So, as in terms of whether the government will clamp down on it, as Tom said, I think it'll happen gently. I don't think there's going to be any sudden stop in benefit in kind for electric cars, but hey, don't come us. Don't.
Well, it's gradually going up, isn't it? There's an extra 1% a year.
Yeah, so that you might find that creeps up by an extra percent, just to kind of even it out. But I don't think there's going to be any overnight kind of sudden changes, because that would go against the kind of idea of trying to get towards the net zero and bringing down fleet emissions and that kind of thing.
Shall I do the next one?
Yes, please do.
This is on the subject of Nicola's half-cut review of the Fiat Panda, or Grande Panda, wasn't it?
Grande.
So for those of you who haven't seen it, and I would recommend it because it's very amusing, Nicola went to the reveal of the Grande Panda, and she was kept in a warm room with 300 other journalists, and it was very hot because it was Italy, and the only thing to drink was champagne. So she did the review, her elbows out, getting to the car after what she claimed was only a couple of glasses, and it was quite entertaining. And Darth Adios, would you say that is?
I'd say that's Darth Adios, yeah.
Says, Nicola is normally so wild and unhinged in her reviews that I didn't notice the difference. Well, he said it, not us. Not us. Yeah.
That's the words of Darth Adios, not us.
And Mark Finn 22 says, as someone who once bought a Bentley Arnage on eBay after a few beers, I would urge caution when offering any kind of advice in an advanced state of refreshment.
Have you?
I think I have probably bought something, but it's always worked out well. I'd probably buy a Bentley Arnage, actually. I love that, but you couldn't drive it. I'd just like to sit in it. That's one of my favourite. Yeah, it's one of my favourite cars.
That's one of the last proper Bentleys, wasn't it?
Yeah, just I went to the factory once and saw how people were making them, and it's just like, this car makes no sense in any way except it's
theme
just
of the podcast. Yeah,
it's just a beautiful thing that's taken craftsmen a long time to make.
I also did this a similar tour to you up at Crewe, and you go into the wood workshop, and there was something like 300 people working there, and it was just the level of craftsmanship, as you say, was astonishing. And I'm sure that will continue in a way, but certainly back in that era when it was just incredible.
I went again when they were doing the Continental GT, which is obviously a very different car, and they're like, look, we found these machines that can sew the steering wheel much faster. And I'm like, well, I'm sure that's great, and the stitching is now even, but it's not quite the same as having a Beryl doing it and using a fork for the spacing for the stitching and things. It was just wonderful.
And of course, the downside of that is when you actually drove it, it used to creak and rattle and everything, because it had been built by people, not robots. So nothing fitted quite perfectly. So it was slightly disappointing. If you're expecting perfection, as Tom said, it's often better just to look at them rather than drive them. So there we go. Radios on startup, which turned out to be an unexpected subject last week. I didn't even know that was a thing. But
do you remember, again, when we used to work on the magazine, there was a car, and of course we used to swap cars all the time.
Yep.
So if it was somebody and you knew they were going to take it, then you would kind of park it right up against the pillar so that they couldn't get in, and then turn the radio up really loud and the vents,
and put the wipers on 3 times speed, so when they got in it, they were flapping around. Yeah, the kind of children we were back there. Anyway, so this stems from Ginny's complaint, which is very much a first world problem, is the fact that when she gets into the car, the radio is already playing, or when she starts it up, its radio is playing. And I've just had a Q4 for the weekend, and it does a similar sort of thing. But I don't know much. If you don't leave it up so loud, then I tend to turn it down when I get out of the car, don't you? I'm one of those people that needs to turn the radio down to reverse.
Yes, I need to concentrate.
I can't have two things going on in my mind, so I virtually turn the radio off when I reverse anyway, which is generally what I do to get into the driveway. So I don't really have that problem. Anyway, Jonky Hertz from the YouTube comment says, radio comes immediately after you press the start button in the Renault Zoe. Annoying. I agree with Ginny. When do you want it to come on? I mean, you know, I really don't understand. Anyway, Mr. Morton says, my very old 2011 car has a feature where you can set the max radio volume on startup. Sounds very good. If you leave the radio on high volume the night before, it will be lowered whenever you set the limit setting.
I'm trying to
Seems
think
brilliant.
what
I don't
that
know what
might
that will
be.
be.
You know, I'd say a Subaru. That sort of Subaru thing.
Do you think?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
Just seems, you know, Mark will be thoughtful.
It does. It seems very clever. Audi Q8, which I had last week, which I said was a nice car but made no sense. Rob Smith 1A says, a friend just bought a 3-year-old e-tron 55 Sportback with 40,000 miles on the clock for 22 grand. A better used buy than new. 100% agree with that. I think if you let someone else have probably some faceless company taking the depreciation hit on that, and a PCP company that's taken the hit on it financially, no one's really lost out. And that's a good buy. Yeah, so 22 grand's good for that.
Talking to Audi Q8, so a friend of mine, hello Anna, had an Audi Q8 and she changed jobs.
Yeah.
And she came round because she needed to choose her company car, and she said, "Right, this is the money I can have, and this is all." So I went through a big long list.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, well, Audi Q8." I'm like, "Well, it doesn't really make much sense." And she's like, "Well, I just quite." So basically, she invited me round to justify that she just wanted another Audi Q8, but she wanted a different colour. And right, okay, well, let's order that then, and we did. And she's got it, and she loves it, and that's fine if that's what she wants.
Audi people are quite Audi people, aren't they? I've got a neighbour across the road, and I've driven a lot of electric cars, but this is the first. The Q4 was the first one he's come over to see. And I walked past it 'cause it's a grey Q4 on standard wheels. You kind of fall over it. It's so anonymous. But yeah, he liked that. He said, yeah, I like it. I said, there's probably better things for the money. A Skoda Enyaq. It was always my test. Is a Skoda Enyaq or an ID4 might be. Yeah, it's an Audi though, isn't it? And that was it. That was the argument. There's no point even continuing a conversation but that's what he likes. So he's not wrong.
One of her justifications was that it has 2 charge ports, and it means you can charge at home and in the office and it's fine. And it's like, okay.
To be fair, that is quite neat.
That is quite neat.
And the door is amazing, isn't it? Yeah, that is quite nice. Yeah,
it actually takes longer than opening one.
Yes, it does. The Ionic's got a powered one, and it just is such a faff. It's just so much easier. I mean, it's not a huge effort because you've got to press the button on the outside to kind of get it to open anyway. So not not saving your hands from getting dirty. Yeah. So you got to manhandle it anyway. So
Manos was showing off the Tesla boot opening earlier.
Right.
And he said, look, you just have to have your phone there, and then you go up, and it beeps 3 times if your phone's close to the boot, and then it opens. I'm like, yes, but it'd be quicker just to press the button. And he's like, but say you've got your hands full.
You've got your phone. You've got to get your phone out. Nonsense. Anyway, we're overrunning as normal, but Bings and Bongs, Tom.
Oh, yeah, this is, I think, my favourite ever comment, this one. This is from Robert Smith, who says, another great episode. In terms of warning sounds, is it weird that I quite like the speed limit warning of my Honda ENY1? It's like a gentle version of the bongs you hear in an aeroplane. Nice. Sometimes I find myself sitting at 41 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone just so I can pretend I'm going on holiday.
That is so lovely.
Isn't it?
I think that's probably the nicest comment we've had, and also the weirdest at the same time.
I'm going to have to book in a Honda ENY1 now so I can pretend I'm going on holiday.
Actually, you know what? The Volvo EX there, for all its shonkiness software-wise, that also has a really nice system. It just kind of slightly ping, ping in the background. The Q4 was like, it was like, it was just like, it was really horrible, and it made you want to turn it off. But the Volvo one was just still gently in the background. You could carry on a conversation with somebody, and it would just kind of nag away at you. And I think it worked better. I felt I dropped more. Hey, we shouldn't be driving over the speed limit anyway. This is nonsense. But I'm just saying that there's ways and means of doing it. It's like when your mum told you to tidy up your room. If she shouted at you, you'd do it. If she sort of said it gently and you said you can watch the FA Cup match tonight, then you would tend to do it. You just be doing things nicely and kindly and asking people to do things in about for me.
But
anyway.
Talking about the bongs, I mean, at the moment, this time of year, all the undergrowth is growing so quickly that it covers over the speed limit.
This is the signs.
So you can't see. So you're going out of a 20-mile-an-hour zone into, like, even around here, into national speed limit 60 mile an hour. It's going bung, 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 because it thinks it's still 20 miles an hour. I thought it was meant to do GPS as well. Sometimes it doesn't.
I don't think it does if it can't pick up. Because Nicola says when she had the Dolphin, someone had hand painted a sign saying "slow down for horses, 10 miles an hour." and the camera kept picking that up. It was a 60 mile an hour bit of road, but it kept going off constantly. So what else do we have, Tom? Bings and bongs.
The electric transition says lane departure warning in the Renault Zoe is a dream because it vibrates the steering wheel rather than making a noise, which means I always leave it on, and it's truly helpful and improves safety. Other manufacturers should take note and hopefully not hindered by Euro NCAP.
Do we think electric transition works at Renault? Because I hate the steering wheel vibration. I'd rather have something visual.
Yeah, it's a bit. I think vibration I don't mind so much. It's when it starts tugging you. That's when, well, not like that, Mike. It starts pulling you back into lane, and you're like trying to overtake or avoid a pothole or something. I think that really gets my,
because that tends to read things like expansion joints if the sun's on them and that sort of thing, doesn't it? Yeah. So okay, maybe we'll give you that electric transition. The tall episode. Last week we spoke about cars for tall people, which I think Ginny was doing grudgingly because I think she wouldn't mind us saying that she's not the tallest of people. She doesn't classify as a tall person, I would say so. But we've had loads of responses from this. I think we could do an entire channel based on tall left-handed people. I think proper niche. Kenneth Paul says, I'm 6 foot, but really struggle to get comfortable in most modern cars. But oddly, most BMWs I am comfortable in. It goes back to what we were saying last week, and so much I think that the German and the Swedish manufacturers tend to build things to a higher percentile of the population, so they tend to add that extra few inches in for seat runners and steering wheel travel and everything. So he says the reach adjustment in the steering wheel just isn't enough in most cars, especially in the Hyundais and Kias. Well, the Ioniq 5 it's okay, it's not brilliant. I prefer it to be a little bit more. Mike, you're completely correct, and this is a sentence I never really often hear, and I'm fed up with being told it's fine for most people. Andrew Grant 5435 from YouTube says yes for the tall people episode. Okay, we'll do our best, but that means me having to do more work. So anyway, we'll get there.
Fun for me.
Yeah. Adrian up north says, Mike, I feel your pain. 6'5" brother. We've got to keep it together. I sat in a Renault Scenic or Scenic E-Tech last week. Definitely a test drive required before committing. I've had
I thought that fits, isn't it? Scenic.
I don't. Well, Ginny says it fits, which is no recommendation at all, really, is it? So. So who else? What else have we got? Neil 300ZX, possibly your car of choice. He'd get on with Manos, wouldn't he?
He would, yeah.
Defo do cars for tall people. I'm 6'4" and not very flexible. You can't do it on Tuesday. And really struggle getting in cars these days. I just managed to shoehorn myself an Ioniq 5. There you go. And the doors seem to be smaller these days.
Yeah, that's because of Euro NCAP, isn't it? So like the Polestar 2 has these, it looks like big doors, but then you open them and there's
it's like getting into an Elise, isn't it?
It's like a porthole.
Yeah.
And I constantly bang my head, and I think I couldn't live with a Polestar 2 because of that reason. I don't bend in the middle as much as some other people, perhaps, but it's like bang every time. So
and that's saying something. So a final one on the topic. Eric Roll says, I'm 6'2" and I fit perfectly in my old Volvo XC70. Now, we're going to sound like that's such a good car, wasn't it?
That was a great car.
Yeah. It was so comfortable. I think it's one of the most. I probably mind the time playing tricks on you, but I seem to remember that car being so comfortable. You could go miles in it, and it was just.
Yeah, it was just quite slow though, wasn't it? That was the only thing.
I didn't mind that. That was such an electric version of Volvo.
Well, yeah, the XC90's coming, isn't it? That's going to be.
I know, but that's a big old thing, isn't it? The XC was that kind of off-road estate, wasn't it? It was kind of it was a really nice combination of things. There's one goes past me where I live, and it just looks really comfortable every time it goes past.
Yeah,
I really like it. Right, a few general observations and rants from the YouTube channel comments. We always love these, even if they are proper rants, and have a go at us because we like to hear what your opinions are.
Ricky Bryan,
yeah.
1759, that's his year of birth. He's quite old, isn't he?
He's getting on a bit now.
I need to know how much Ginny pulled rank to do the Cyberster review. I don't think she did because we just didn't see the invite. I don't think we
saw the invite for that, so it wasn't even that debate.
It's like, what? Where are you?
Yeah, Ginny's in Scotland. Oh, okay, what for? Oh, the Cyberster. Oh, yeah, okay. That didn't come across any of our desks, did it? Anyway, so what else have we got?
Anonymous PDG 6121. So Ginny's wall. Ginny's wall. Actually, she's going on holiday, isn't she? We should just. I think her neighbour's got the keys. She's just go in and
paint it. Yeah. See if she notices.
I'm not even going to comment, as I won't get it done in my it won't get done in my lifetime. And then Nicola needs to get her soundproofing finished as well.
Yeah.
Most curious, why does Mike have camouflage gear in the corner? Is he going to do sneaky peeks at new cars in development, or is it just a bit of twitching? Both images of Mike in full camp gear are now there forever.
Well, that's nice to
And
know.
you were-
That no, I think what I'm struggling to think. I think what you're referring to, that I've got a when I do a bit of swimming, it's my dry robe. And there's a term for people who like their dry robes, and it's not particularly complimentary now these days. But yes, it's I've got the camouflage one. But it turns out that's the one everybody seems to hate. But that's what I wear when I do a bit of cold water swimming, isn't it? It's all, listen, you swim in the UK, it's always cold water swimming.
Yeah.
And I haven't been for a while, so I can't say I'm a regular cold water swimmer. But I think the thing you're seeing in the corner is my dry robe. So no, I don't go twitching, and I don't go and hide out in hedgerows trying to find spy shots of cars. So, so there we go.
A World of Cars LDN says Nicola definitely needs to stop calling estates long boys. But if you want to keep the reference, maybe 6'5" Mike could be called the long boy.
Not for the first time. And on that unsavoury note, I think we should perhaps call an end.
Yeah.
We've overshot by 11 minutes as usual, so apologies if you really want
We normally blame the women for talking too much.
I know, we've just been gassing too much. It's just too comfortable in here, isn't it? We should do this again.
Yeah.
It's really nice. So if you have been listening and watching, please, thank you very much for staying with us. All comments, please, on the YouTube channel below the podcast, or if you want to email us with any questions or queries, podcast@electrifying.com. From the back of the Arctic 5,
Yeah.
farewell.
Goodbye.